Hey everybody, welcome back to another Jackson Jet Setting Cruise Review. Today I'm reviewing my 7-night sailing on the Carnival Luminosa, which sailed from Seattle to Alaska. It was my first time cruising to Alaska, so I was excited to see what all was different compared to my normal Caribbean cruising. And I was excited to try out the Luminosa, which is very different than most Carnival ships given its history as a Costa ship. So let's get started, but before we do, if you like this video, give it a like, leave us a comment, and feel free to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. I stayed the night before the cruise in downtown Seattle at the Hyatt Regency Seattle, which I can't recommend enough. If y'all are regulars on the channel, you know I post full tours and reviews of everywhere I stay in the world, so you can check that out in the link below. My Hyatt status gets me a lot of perks when I check in, so I loved the free breakfast downstairs and a small upgrade that I received at the Hyatt Regency. Boarding day came and it couldn't have been more simple. We took an Uber to the port, but you can also take a paid shuttle bus from the airport if you're flying in the same day as your voyage. The pier the Luminosa uses is a little north of downtown, about a 15-minute ride. The airport is about 30 to 45 minutes away from the port, depending on traffic. The embarkation process was the smoothest that I've had. The port workers were incredibly friendly handling our bags, and the lines were non-existent once we got inside the terminal for our check-in time, and we were even there a little bit earlier than our check-in time. So less than 10 minutes later, we were through security and on board. Next, we headed to lunch in the buffet. I was really excited to try the pizza as I heard amazing things about it. It absolutely did not disappoint. It's the best that I've had at sea now, and not ashamed to say my dad and I stopped by there many times during our voyage to try all the different flavors. The buffet was a hit for us throughout our cruise. We both loved the Asian food options when that counter was available. But I did miss the Guy's Burgers and Blue Iguana Cantina that are on the other Carnival ships that I've sailed on. This ship doesn't have any of those, sadly. Instead, it just has like a generic Mexican stand and a burger stand, which were fine, but not really that memorable. Guy's Burgers is just so good on the other Carnival ships. It was definitely something that I missed. Our time in the main dining room was also great. I love the Carnival main dining room food. It seems to always be very high quality, and I always compare it to Royal Caribbean since that's the other cruise line that I sail a whole bunch, and it's just way better on Carnival. The nightly short dance by the waitstaff is a great touch, keeps the energy going, and double points for a magician roaming around one evening. On sea days, don't miss the sea day brunch in the main dining room, which you can reserve in the app when the dining room opens. The brunch burger was excellent. We also enjoyed the chicken and waffles. Since this was an Alaska sailing, I was curious to see how many used the pools. It was great that the Luminosa had a covered pool deck with retractable roof, so a main pool was always open despite the weather. But the weather was perfect during our sailing, so I feel like even they could have opened the roof up most days. There was also an uncovered pool that's heated in the back of the ship with 2 hot tubs that we enjoyed. We enjoyed it after some of our port days, after we got back from our excursions. But for the kids, unfortunately, there were no water slides on board, which is kind of rare for a Carnival ship. My room was ready shortly after lunch. We were sailing in a balcony cabin, which I highly recommend for Alaska sailings. The views are incredible the entire week, and you never know what kind of wildlife is going to be out there from the balcony, so it's nice to have. It's also nice just to check the weather when you arrive in port because it can just vary so much in Alaska. But the room was perfect size for 2 adults, and we got along great in there. The muster drill is easy to do on Carnival. It's a quick stop by the muster station for a short demonstration about how to use your life jackets, and then you're on your way. One annoying thing I have found, though, on embarkation day is before I get my key from my stateroom, they're always available outside the stateroom once you arrive, is you got to get your folio number from guest services because that's going to allow you to use your internet package that you might have bought. Now, if you didn't buy the internet package, this is not applicable to you, but for me, I like to log into the internet package as soon as I get on board because service can kind of be spotty on the interiors of the ship. So if you do want that internet, you're going to have to stop by the front desk for that, and sometimes the line can be a little long on embarkation day. Throughout the week, we participated in a number of activities on board. The ship had 2 comedians during our sailing who were both hilarious. They also had a very small comedy venue that they performed in, and it was a hot ticket, so getting there early was key. In addition, we played bingo, which I haven't had much luck at lately at sea, as well as a deal or no deal, which is a lot of fun. Trivia is a highlight on any cruise for me, but unique to Alaska sailings is a naturalist that they bring on board. Emily was amazing throughout the trip. She detailed what we were likely to see, different types of wildlife, and led wildlife watching sessions on deck several times throughout the week. She also made announcements over the intercom system for major whale spotting moments, which was a lot of fun. They also had production shows like you see on most ships, and they even brought in someone from Skagway that was local that had a very fun Alaska-themed show, and it was only available one night in Skagway. We had 4 ports of call during our voyage. We had Juno, Skagway, a scenic cruising day in Tracy Arm Fjord, Ketchikan, and Victoria, British Columbia. Juno was our first stop, the capital of Alaska. We arrived in the early afternoon, but had until about 9 p.m. in port, which was odd timing, but ended up working out great for us. We had a perfect weather during our day there, many locals calling it the best day of the year. We did a whale watching and Mendenhall Glacier excursion throughout the ship, a very well executed tour with a great crew on the ship, and our bus driver was great as well. We saw tons of whales, unfortunately just humpback whales, no orcas, but also some bald eagles, and then we drove over to Mendenhall Glacier for an hour-long stop. I hustled over to Nugget Falls there for a quick photo op, which was about a mile round trip. There's a great visitor center there, so don't miss that, and also a small salmon run nearby, which was really cool, and the salmon were actually there during our visit. We had time after the tour to walk into downtown Juneau to one of the best pizza spots in the whole country right now. It's called in Boca al Lupo. So definitely stop by there if you are there later. You definitely have time for dinner, but it does get a little busy in there. So then after that, we headed back to the ship. If you want a little bit more about our day there, you can check out my video on the channel, and I'll put the link down below. Skagway was the stop I was most excited about, and that was the next day. It's due to like all the gold rush history. I'm a big history buff, and the National Park Service has a big presence in the city. It is a national historical park. So the town is well preserved as a result and feels very much from another time. Our tour on this port day was with the White Pass and Yukon Railroad up to British Columbia, and then a mountain bike excursion back down into town. I loved the train ride. It had our own rail car just for our group, and we had a perfect day of weather going up the canyon with tons of amazing views as we made our way into Canada. About the right amount of time on board, about an hour and a half. And the mountain biking down was the kind of let down, I would say, as we had to go very slow down the highway we were riding on and not self-guide ourselves back to Skagway, so we ended up just riding the brakes all the way down, and your hands ended up hurting. You were going so slow. But you did stop and see some cool things along the way. And one of the fun things that we did on the way back was you actually have to clear customs back into the US on a bike. Tracy Arm Fjord is technically not a day you get off the ship. The Luminosa will sail into the scenic fjord for sightseeing, but they do offer a $250 boat excursion that takes you from the ship onto a smaller boat into the fjord, deeper into the fjord for views of the glacier. Despite the perfect weather, the ice field was tough to navigate on our day, so we couldn't get up close to the Hubbard Glacier like I wanted to, but we did have another less pretty glacier as a consolation prize. I still feel the trip was worth it because the scenery was just absolutely beautiful, but know that the views aren't guaranteed. Ketchikan was a shorter stop, early morning until about 2 p.m., which I was kind of bummed about as there's a lot to do in town. We opted to try out the Lumberjack Show, which was a cheap but fun use of an hour's time. And then we walked through town and checked out all the other sites. Creek Street is a fun, free activity, and it's got a lot of shops, and it's the former red light district for Ketchikan. So it's got a very Alaska feel in town, and this was one I definitely want to return to. Victoria is used to get around an outdated U.S. law for ships that requires an international stop if doing a closed-loop cruise like we were. So the stop is really only 3 hours long. We got in at about 8:15 at night, and we had to be off the ship in 12 hours back in Seattle the next morning. So my dad stayed on board, but I opted to still jump off the ship and walk into town, which was a nice choice because the town is very pretty at night. The Parliament building is a highlight, but unfortunately the famous gardens weren't an option for me since I didn't see the point that late at night, and the tour was very expensive despite it not really being light outside. Debarkation the next day was seamless as always, so that was really great. Now, the big question is, would I cruise Carnival in Alaska again? Absolutely I would, but I do feel like choosing the perfect itinerary is key for Alaska. I'd like to see better glaciers from the ship, so there's different fjords that you can choose, or going into Glacier Bay National Park. And having more time in port, ideally, at some of the other stops, I think would have been a little nicer. The Luminosa crew were great, and the ship was in great condition compared to other Carnival ships I've reviewed on the channel. So overall, definitely would return on the Luminosa, and definitely back to Alaska. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next cruise video.